Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the second Christmas special episode of the Ground and Poundcast. Today I am joined with Rick, and we were looking at the recent UFC fights from last week, the upcoming UFC fights for next week, and all of the latest UFC news to discuss about, but we realized that there weren't any of those. So what we decided to do instead was look at every single division in the UFC and look at the title picture and kind of get an idea of what we think that 2026 might deliver for all of these divisions. So I'm joined with Rick. Tell everyone hi, Rick.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, so we're just going to go through every single division. There's maybe a little bit of news that we could discuss, but for the most part, we're just going to be talking about our predictions for 2026 for all the title divisions, the champions, who we think might be champion at the end of the year, and all that fun stuff. So we're going to start with the heaviest divisions and work our way down and finish off with the women's division. So we're going to start with the UFC heavyweight division. Tom Aspinall is the champion. So what do you think about this division, Rick?
So looking at it, of course, Tom and Gon have unfinished business. We've seen how that started. We saw Gon look pretty good. I think most people were a little surprised. He maybe even won that round, that first round up until the eye poke. But regardless, it was very competitive. So a rematch, the odds will probably reflect it's going to be more of a toss-up. I don't know if Tom will be favored even. And that's something, worth looking into. But also we have Derek Lewis, and he's fighting Waldo Acosta here coming up in a big fight here on, 324. And that kind of feels like a number one contenders match to me because Acosta, of course, they're trying to get the shine off Lewis to prop him up with all his activity and his wins in a division that severely needs people to be active. He's one of those guys. He might be the only guy. And, of course, Lewis, if he knocks him out, it is such a shallow division. Even though he's eighth in the division, I could easily see him popping up after a top 5 win, after his string of knockouts, and just saying, hey, you know what? Why not? Just people would watch it, whether it's Gon, versus Lewis or Tom versus Lewis. People are going to tune in to watch that type of fight. Gon has a lot of hatred towards him these days. So maybe if he were to get past Tom and get knocked out by Lewis, people would rejoice. And, of course, Tom, I think, is going to have a chip on his shoulder. And so just kind of fast forwarding through what I think will happen, I think Tom beats Gon. I think he's going to come out just ticked off. The man was blinded, and he's definitely got some stuff to prove. Plus, he's heard all these people say, oh, John Jones, it didn't take him that long to get through Gon. And, all the things that surround that conversation. I think Tom comes out, chip on his shoulder, pedal down. I think he gets through Gon. And then I think he gets through. I'm going to say Lewis beats Waldo. And I'm going to say they fight each other towards the end of 26. Maybe it's October, something like that. But I think Tom, I'm going to give him his credit and his flowers. I think he gets past Lewis or Waldo. And I think by the end of 2026, we're looking at Tom Aspinall with 2 eyes that hopefully are functioning properly and the belt still around his waist. That's kind of how I see that playing out.
Yeah, so obviously you have to start with the Gon and Aspinall rematch, because it ended in no contest, as we all know, and very controversial ending, and all that hubbub. So we have to get past this chapter. I'm not sure if I agree that Lewis beats Waldo, but I think Aspinall beats either. I think Aspinall would also beat Gon, maybe not. We'll see. When I look at the rest of the top 10, most of these people have already lost to Gon or Aspinall or both. You look at Volkov and Pavlovich and Blades and Almeida. Like these are all. Almeida hasn't fought those 2, but Almeida's lost to other people who have lost to Aspinall and Gon. So yeah, it really is a shallow division. And I've said on many episodes over the last couple of months that we have to get some newer names in here to shake things up. And I've mentioned a few names already. The only ones that are in the top 15 in the rankings that we can see are Walter Walker and Waldo Cortez Acosta. I had mentioned, was it Pinto? And there's another name. I don't have the names in front of me because they're not in the rankings, but there's a few names that really impressed me a few months back, and I'd like to see those names come up. But right now, it really is a shallow division. We have to look at who's going to be holding the title after Gon and Aspinall. And then, the only other potential contenders I could see, as you mentioned, are the winner between the Lewis and Acosta fight. Pretty much everybody else have already had their shots and lost. You could have examples of rotating title syndrome where there's just nobody else. Let's say, hypothetically, Aspinall beats Gane, Aspinall beats winner of Lewis Acosta, and then who's left if you don't have these other new names that I mentioned that have worked their way up through the rankings? Maybe they just throw whoever's looked better in the other top 5, 6 or so. So the names I mentioned just now, Volkov, Pavlovich, Blades, Almeida, whoever's maybe looked good, the best out of those in 2026. If Aspinall is still holding the title at the end of it, they'll just feed one of those to him just because that's who they have available. Maybe we'll see a trilogy between him and Blades. I don't think people will be excited about it, but this is definitely something that I could see as being a possibility because the division is so shallow. So, yeah, we really do need to get some young blood to shake up this division and make things interesting, because when you get outside of the top few, it's just not a very exciting division to watch.
Well, and also you got to look at it like this. If Aspinall wins, all these younger guys that we're talking about that potentially could get into the rankings, this, that, and the other, they really could catapult themselves by 2027 into a title shot, because Tom Aspinall has kind of cleared out the division. So if he beats Gane and then he gets through Lewis or Waldo, it's literally wide open. So Walter Walker, to your point, he's 15-1. People don't really know about him. He's 14th right now. But if Tom's still holding the belt at the end of 26, somebody like Walker, if he puts a couple more wins together, there's no reason he couldn't jump into the top 5 or 6. You look at a guy like Tai Tuivasa, he's 12th right now, and he's got 5 straight losses. So there's plenty of opportunity for these younger guys to catapult way up into the top 10 real quick.
Yes, they could. Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. Now, if Gane wins it, there's some people he hasn't gone through. He really hasn't had the resume that Aspinall has had, so there are some potential matchups out there. And then, we always talk about it. It's kind of a laughing point at this point, but you look at Almeida. Almeida, I think, is just going to get blackballed, even if he keeps winning, because it's just so boring. And at the end of the day, it's about eyeballs. I don't know who's tuning into an Almeida fight. I don't know who's doing that.
You really have to mention eyeballs when we're talking about Tom Aspinall's division. That's just low, man. It's just low.
Low hanging fruit, man.
Yeah, so we need to get some young blood to shake up this division. And you're right, to your point, with a lot of these names being stagnant. A guy like Walker or Pinto, who's not ranked. There's another name, I apologize, I don't have it up in front of me, is another person that really caught my eye that has a lot of wins, but he's unranked. I could see with these names being so stagnant, and this really comes down to A, the matchmaking, and B, whoever's in charge of the rankings actually doing a good job. They could take these names and say, okay, let's put them against the top 15 early, in 2026. If he wins that match, let's put him against a low top 10, like 7, 8, 9. And then if he wins that one, a top 5, you could see someone catapult from being unranked to a top 5 fight in 2 or 3 fights. So maybe we'll see something like that, since we have so many stagnant names. Give these up-and-comers those fast lane opportunities. We've done it for other divisions, for other fighters. They brag about how Alex Pereira in X amount of fights is the 2-division champion. The only reason why is because they gave him those opportunities. They were able to find him opponents that are highly ranked to let him have that fast track. We need to do that with some of these people, or else we're just going to be sitting watching these stagnant names fight over and over. So I do think we need to, try to fast track some of these people, give them their opportunities. Like I mentioned, Walker, he's currently ranked 14. Let's put him against a top 10 next fight. Instead of giving him like 13 or 12, put him against someone who's ranked between 5 and 10. And if he wins that fight, he's 1 or 2 at most away from a title fight. That's what we really need to do to help shake things up, in my opinion.
Agreed. And it's all about the matchmaking. Like Pereira, they put him against guys that would strike. He fought Sean Strickland in a match. He had a couple other fights. And of course, they wanted to get him against Israel Adesanya because Israel had cleaned out the division. So it's all about making these guys, presenting these guys with the opportunities where they'll thrive, not in a position where, this guy likes to knock people out and he's going to go up against Almeida. Make it a sexy matchup to where he can knock out a big name, a Derek Lewis per se, and really catapult himself up. And I think the UFC, they'll probably have their eyes on that, and that's something they should look forward to doing.
Right. Now, moving on to the next division, another division that's sort of top heavy. We got the light heavyweight division, currently the title being held by Alex Pereira, who's now a 2-division champion after losing and immediately regaining the title after his fight with Magomed Ankalaev. It's interesting. I'm looking at the rankings here, and like all the other rankings, you have, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. And instead of a 2 and a 1, you have 2 people that are ranked number 1. I don't know if that's like a typo on the website, but they have Ankalaev and Yuri both ranked 1. And then Alex Pereira, of course, champion. I don't know if that's a typo or if they're tied in the rankings. That's weird.
If you look at middleweight, they actually have 2 people tied for 10th, Michael Page and Jared Cannonier.
I didn't see that. Okay.
It makes me wonder if they have like a voting system and there's points and then the points even out at the end. And I don't know. That's something worth looking into, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, either way, when you're looking at the top 5, you got Yuri, Magomed, Carlos Holberg, Khalil Roundtree, Jan Blachowicz. So, yeah, this division is another one that's pretty top heavy. I think it's not quite as shallow as heavyweight, but there is a noticeable drop off when you get past 5. I think the only notable name outside the top 5 is Jamal Hill, former champion ranked at 7, who's on a 3-fight losing streak, but he's still a notable name. Outside of that, it's people.
Johnny Walker.
Their glory days are long behind them, or they're very inconsistent, like Johnny Walker.
Right.
I remember, I look at number 14. I remember heavily praising Jean Mignon, thinking that he might be the next big thing in the light heavyweight division. And maybe he can be. He just maybe had a bad day against Johnny Walker a few months back, but that's someone I thought was just going to destroy everybody all the way up to title contention, and he got whooped by Johnny Walker. And then, when I look at these other names like 6 and 8 through 15, it's a bunch of people that either their glory days are long behind them or there's someone who just doesn't seem to have it. But the top 5 are pretty solid. So how do you think 2026 looks for the light heavyweight division with these names that we're looking at?
So I got to say, this one's kind of the biggest question mark to me, simply because Alex Pereira is your champ. Alex Pereira is going to fight what seems to be John Jones at the White House. Nothing's official, but I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. If that happens, does he fight him at light heavyweight for the belt, which I think he should? I know Uncle Chael has mentioned that on his pod, but I mean, it really does make all the sense in the world. How do you have John Jones fighting Pereira and not for a belt? That seems wild to me. So why wouldn't you make that at 205? You could have John Jones going back to reclaim his belt. Of course, that's where he, got all his notoriety and fame. But if that does not happen, Pierre moves up to heavyweight. Does he stay at heavyweight? Is he tired of the weight cuts? Does he move up and say, you know what, this is nice. I don't have to kill myself right before I go into a fight. I'm going to stay at heavyweight.
Plus, he wants to be the first 3-division champion.
Of course, triple champ. You got to try and beat Ilia Topuria. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so you're looking at a situation where it's very much in flux. We don't know, in 6 months if Alex Pereira will even be your champ. And so, because if he puts that belt down to go chase heavyweight aspirations. So all that being said, to me, Carlos Ulberg is the big name. Yuri is the fan favorite of the division. I love watching Yuri. I don't know anybody who doesn't. It's just exciting. It's a street fight. It's weird. It's wild. He's got all the angles. He's got knockout power. He could take a lick, all this, that. But I would say Yuri and Ulberg might match up in an interim fight potentially. But I like Ulberg a lot, man. I think if Alex Pereira doesn't fight Ulberg, if he doesn't come back down to light heavyweight after, the White House card, where he moves up, which is what I'm predicting. He'll probably move up to heavyweight. Then I would say Ulberg versus Yuri is what takes place. I think Ulberg gets past Yuri. It would be a great fight, and I could very well be wrong, but I just think Ulberg is really on this march up, and I could see him by the end of 26 holding the belt. If Alex decides to stay or come back down, though, it's hard to pick against Alex Pereira, especially with these strikers. Ulberg's going to want to kickbox. And that's just the last thing you really want to do with Alex Pereira. You don't want to go in there and get in his realm. We're talking about a glory 2-time 2-division champ, the only one at the time, and may still be the only one ever in glory to do that. The man is an excellent kickboxer. So anybody who's going to want to stand and bang, Yuri's found out a couple different times. That's really not what you want to do. Ankalaev found out once Pereira didn't look right in their first fight, but in that second fight, he just pedaled down, came out, and made quick work of him. I don't see anybody beating that version of Alex Pereira. So I'll say he holds the belt if he stays. If he leaves, I think it's Oldberg's.
Yeah, Carlos Ulberg really is the next one that you really got to keep your eye on. I've been saying for quite a handful of months now that he's the man to keep your eye on in that division when it comes to going after the title. You could potentially see the trilogy with Ankalaev because they are 1-1, but A, no one's excited for that because people are just not hyped on Ankalaev, and B, like, it was very different outcomes. Like, one was kind of a boring, slow-paced grind to a decision, while the other one was just a first-round knockout domination. So some people think that we don't really need the trilogy. So, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. I do think that it is still a potential that we eventually get it if there's no one else, that they could have put against Alex Pereira. So basically what I'm getting at is we could possibly see a trilogy with Ankalaev. I don't see Yuri getting another shot because he's already 0-2. As great as he is and as highly ranked as he is, when you're 0-2 against a champion, they're going to give a lot of other people opportunities first. So outside of that, you're looking at a lot of people that are going to be fighting to try to get to the top of the hill that have mostly fought each other already. Guys like Khalil Roundtree, you got Jan Blachowicz and Ankalaev. These guys are all going to be vying for their position. And I mentioned earlier, outside of the top 5, you have Jamal Hill, who's dropped all the way to 7. He was champion not all that long ago, and it's plummeted all the way to 7 because he's 0-3. And I'm really curious to know what's going to happen with Hill here, because it almost seems like maybe his mind's not in the game, his heart's not in it. He was talking a whole lot, leading up to his Alex Pereira fight, and it's been 0-3 since then. I don't know if he is going to rebuild himself and come back stronger and work his way back up to the top 5, or if he's basically washed and is on his way out now. I guess we'll see. I've said before that I think Jamal Hill's striking is pretty solid when it comes to his offense. He's a headhunter with really accurate hands, pretty decent kicks, but the problem is he lacks on defense. He allows himself to get hit too much, and that's how Khalil Roundtree was able to batter him all the way to a decision, a very one-sided decision. That's how Yuri Prohaska and Alex Pereira are both able to knock him out, because he allows himself to get hit. If he cleans up his defense, he could actually get back in the running. And the only reason why I'm mentioning his name so much is because he actually might be looking at fighting a guy in the top 5 sometime in 2026, and Jan Blachowicz. I don't know if you caught all the drama I mentioned on the last episode, the drama between, of all people, Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jamal Hill. Did you catch all that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, I'm up to date on it, yeah, very much so.
It's a very ridiculous bit of drama. It's kind of silly, but it possibly will result in a fight, because Jan Blachowicz, sticking up to his fellow Polish fighter, came out defending Joanna, and so he had some back and forth online with Jamal Hill, and so they're saying, hey, we got a problem. We're in the same weight class. We could settle this in the ring. So we might see that fight. If that fight happens, do you think Hill gets past Jan Blachowicz? Do you think he gets back in the win column, or do you think he's just washed and gonna lose like he keeps doing against everybody else? What do you think?
I just think at some point age catches up to Jan, because he's 42, 43, somewhere in there now. So I don't know.
Hill does 30s, I think.
Yeah, Hill looks like a different fighter, to your point. Like he doesn't have the same pop that he used to. I remember when I watched him and he fought Glover, and he just absolutely picked him apart. And that's when he won the belt, January of 23. It was impressive. It was quite the display of offense. And he could take some shots, but man, he just absolutely mauled Glover Teixeira. And so that guy is not the guy I've been seeing in the octagon, though.
No.
And we saw him fight Alex Pereira at 300, and he got knocked out in the first round, and it really wasn't all that competitive. I've heard that there's rumors he might try and like cut weight and kind of like reinvent himself and move down to middleweight. The problem with middleweight is there's a guy named Hamzat Chimaev, and he would have absolutely no shot in my book. Of course, I think that for most, but I don't really know if that's the play. Being a weight bully, it helps, but I don't know if that's going to be advantageous, especially considering the champ of that division. So, yeah, if he fights Jan, I would give him the nod, but I wouldn't feel real confident about it.
Right.
It's very much a toss-up in my book.
And you mentioned him possibly going down to middleweight, and kind of a hot take. I actually said that a while back when he lost to Roundtree after that fight.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought I was crazy, but when I watched that, Jamal Hill cuts to 205 like all fighters do for their weight division. They don't walk around at their weight class.
Right.
Except for maybe a very small handful of people. They cut, like 5 pounds or something, but most are cutting a good bit. Jamal Hill cuts to 205, and even cutting to 205, he looks kind of pudgy. And,
he does.
And look, I'm overweight myself. I'll be honest, so I'm not like saying this is an insult, but if you're cutting to 205 and like in the fight, cut at 205, and your opponents cut to 205 and they're looking washboard abs and looking really cut and clean, and you got what looks like a beer gut at 205, I see no reason why you can't drop weight, not cut weight, drop weight, lose some flab, and make 185 easily. I think he could if he chose to go that route. And I'm not saying that to like insult him on his body type or anything like that. I'm just saying that like when you look the way you do cutting to 205, it's very feasible that you could make 185 if you slim down, and he could probably do really good at 185. I don't know if the weight cut would drain him too much. I don't know if he beats Chimaev because it's Chimaev, but right. I mean, I don't know. I don't see him becoming champion again, but I could at least see him if he cleans up his physicality a bit and works on his striking defense more. I could see him at least getting some of his prestige back and getting some more wins and getting some more money before he ultimately retires. But that's my take on him.
Yeah, it's just a matter of motivation. He's won the championship. He's headlined one of the biggest cards ever. He's done a lot of things, and does he still have that dog in him? And if he doesn't, that's okay too. But, maybe it's just time to look another direction if that's the case, because the last thing you want is to go get in the octagon versus a killer who's been training real hard and you haven't. And that gate closes and it's like, oh, no, what did I just do? So we'll see what he does. But another loss or two, you start stacking losses, Dana White's not going to want you around. That's just the bottom line.
Right. So even if you are a former champion, like he's already 3 fight losing streak. So.
Right. If he gets a 4th straight loss, and granted, guys in the top 5, but if you were to go in there and fight another guy in Jan Blachowicz and take another loss, that's 4 straight. And then at what point is it like, okay, man, what are we doing?
Yeah. But anyway, enough on Jamal Hill. I think we covered all the important stuff at light heavyweight. So basically, in a nutshell, it's Olberg and Pereira, the 2 names to look at, and all the other names are maybes if Pereira sticks around and we just need to feed someone else to him. Outside of that, I think we need more names, kind of like heavyweight. We need some more younger names to come up.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to middleweight. This is a very interesting weight division. It has some names that I'm liking this division more than light heavyweight and heavyweight because you have some people that have good momentum behind their names, some good winning streaks who haven't faced the champion yet or haven't faced even some of the former champions like Strickland and Duplessis yet. So there's a lot more moving parts and there's more potential. Like the last 2 divisions, it's like our options are more limited. I think there's a lot of options in middleweight. I think we could talk a full hour on this division if we wanted to, but we don't have time for that. Let's look at the highlights here. So we have Chimaev as champion. You have former champion Drix Duplessis is still ranked as 1, and his only loss was to Chimaev. You have Sean Strickland at 3, Israel Adesanya at 6. These are all your former champions. And you have Robert Whittaker at 9. And then you have a bunch of other hungry up and comers that are all throughout this division. A lot of potential for a lot of really big fights that we can see in 2026 and very interesting title picture. So who do you think is next in line? What do you think is next for the title picture at middleweight?
So the long and short of it is I think Chimaev's the best fighter on earth, and I do think he'll be the guy holding that belt. And that's not to undermine what I'm about to tell you because I think there is a whole lot of interesting matchups and there are a lot of prospects that are right there. You look at it, you got Sean Strickland, who's the number 3 fighter in the world, fighting Fluffy Hernandez in Houston in 2 months. That is a massive fight. And I think the winner of that fight, you could look at to be right there in contention They haven't really discussed Chimaev's next opponent. Of course, he's talking a lot about Alex Pereira. I just don't see that coming together real soon. So maybe you're taking the winner of that fight and he's going to fight Chimaev, or maybe you just do a Mavov, who's been the number one contender for a while. Of course, you're not going to put Duplessis right back in there. We all saw how that went. So I think you're looking at either a Mavov, which I think he deserves that title shot. I don't think he wins, but I think he deserves it. And then potentially the winner is going to be the winner of Strickland Hernandez. That's kind of how I see that division playing out going into next year. I'm very much an Anthony Hernandez fan. I've said it a couple times on the podcast. Just the way he dominated Doldize and just watching in a few of his fights, he's excellent. He's beaten Brendan Allen, who's number 5. Brendan Allen's coming up. He's a good young fighter. He's not so much young, but he's a good fighter. He's really in his prime right now, fighting out of Louisiana. I think he's a guy you can keep an eye on as well. But it really kind of boils back down to Chimaev fighting the winner of Strickland Hernandez. I think Hernandez gets past Strickland. And I'm, again, a huge Hernandez fan, but I don't see him competing with Chimaev. I just think Chimaev's on a whole different planet.
Yeah, Brendan Allen, you mentioned his name. One of the best underdog wins of the year, upsets of the year. I don't know if it's the best, maybe the best non-title upset win of the year against RDR. I think a lot of people didn't see that coming.
I agree. I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I'm ashamed to admit that because, I usually back the Louisiana fighters, but RDR was he was on such a hot streak, and he ended Bo Nichols' undefeated record, and he wasn't just beating people, like he was dominating people. He looked amazing in every single fight, and as good as Brendan Allen is, he had a few losses recently against people that were not highly ranked, so it's like he's good, but he's not great, where RDR is great, and he ended up whooping RDR. It shows that anybody could beat anybody, depending on certain circumstances. If you really put your heart into things, you never know how things could play out. But back to this title division or title picture for this division, you got, Imavov, as you mentioned, he's really. I don't know if we're going to see. Wasn't there some talk about Chimaev not wanting to fight him because of the whole Chechen and Russian relationship? I think he had mentioned something about that.
I saw that as well, but to me, you can't have guys calling who they're going to fight.
I agree, but it seems like maybe they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna try to avoid that from happening, but it would be an interesting fight. What do we do with Dricus du Plessis? I mean, he's beaten everybody he's faced in the UFC with the exception of Chimaev. He's still at the top of the division outside of Chimaev. Do we put him against Mavov? There's no reason to put him against Strickland again.
Yeah, if you don't put a Mavov versus Chimaev, which again I think is the right play, I think he's earned it. Then to me they have to fight each other. The problem you have with that is if you have 1 fighting 2 and 3 fighting 4, you really are almost saying, well, the winner of Duplessis and Mavov gets that title shot. I mean, how do you not? And so,
right.
If it's a Mavov, it's an easy thing to explain. But if it's Duplessis, the last thing anybody wants to see is that fight. I mean, so he's really in a weird spot. Yeah. I almost think about it like the BMF. They kind of give it to people or they have people fight for it who aren't really going to be in title contention. Maybe they're really good guys. Max Holloway, the perfect example, right? But you look at Duplessis, it's like, okay, well, who can you really fight? If 3's fighting 4 and then you got a Mavov who's next in line and should get that fight, then you go all the way down to like Brendan Allen at 5. Sign me up for that. That would be a great fight. But again, if he beats another top 5 fighter, he's right there in line for the title shot that he doesn't, I'm not going to say doesn't deserve, but it's just nobody wants to see that. And I don't know how much you can really jump your wrestling ability in a year's time. I don't know that he's going to get in there with all the best trainer and training in the world and be able to compete with Chimaev. I just don't see that fight looking any different anytime soon. So he's just, to me, of all the fighters on the roster, he's in the weirdest spot. He's got a 1 by his name, and nobody wants to see him fight the title.
Right.
Nobody wants to see him fight for the title. So
it really is a tough spot. It would be one thing if it was a very competitive fight, but it wasn't. So it was not even close. And he is really, really good at what he does. Like I said before, after he lost, he still is a good grappler. A lot of people were hating on him, said he has no grappling after getting completely out wrestled by Chimaev. But it's like, dude, it was Chimaev who did that to him. Look at all of his other matches where he has done grappling and he's always come out on top. He has a good bit of submission wins. But in the same breath, it really is hard to justify give him another title shot whenever it was that one-sided. And then he's already 2-0 against Sean Strickland. And then the other people you're looking at possibly skipping over Drickus just to get a title shot. So yeah, it really is a weird spot for him to be in. Like, who do you put him against next? So I don't know. Looking down this division though, I do think we have some potential exciting fights, not so much title implications, but just climbing the ladder. If I was a matchmaker, I'm looking at this top 15 and I see a few that really stick out. I think we can make some really exciting fights. I think a big one to make, because these two had a lot of momentum in 2024 and 2025. They looked really, really good. And then they both end up taking losses towards the end of the year. And I still think there's a lot of potential behind those names. So I think put these two against each other and you could have someone building themselves back up off this fight. And that is ranked number 7, Caio Baralho. I have such a hard time with these Brazilian names. I have a hard time with all these names. Yeah, it's Caio, and I've heard Bahalio. I've heard it pronounced a few different ways. The leader of the Fighting Nerds, going against number 8 ranked Renier de Ritter, RDR. 7 and 8 both looked really, really good over the last couple of years, but they both did lose their last fights. And so they're both looking to rebuild. I think that's a really good fight to make, have those two go at it to see who can build their momentum back up first and get climbing up that ladder again. What do you think about that potential fight?
I love that fight. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. Again, you're looking at a top 10 matchup, so the winner's putting themselves right back in a position. I do think Dana White's going to look down upon RDR quitting on the stool. And so sometimes guys get blackballed. Arman Sarukian, we've seen that with him. If he just decides he doesn't like you, for better or worse, it's just what it is. And maybe he's in that position. Maybe he doesn't get another big name fight anytime soon for that reason. But if those two were to tangle, that would be super exciting. That would headline a fight night or what have you. I've said this before, and I'll keep banging this drum. I might be the only guy saying it, but we got to figure out something to do with Israel Adesanya because he's still number 6. And Michael Page, how much fun would that be? Just forget about, that would just be, it's a top 10 fight, stylistically, everything. Like, who is not just sitting down to watch that fight? I think that would be fireworks. I would definitely love to see something like that. And that kind of gives a little more clarity. If Israel loses, okay, we're going to start moving him down. And Michael Page, I think he's my age, 38, 39. So it's like he's at the end of his rope. Give him another couple good fights. If he can get past an Adesanya, maybe a Brendan Allen, he's right there. Maybe he fights Duplessis even if he gets past Israel. And that would be an interesting fight. Who knows? But to me, get some of these guys. And you look at Joe Pyfer and RoboCop at 14 and 15. Give these guys some big names because one thing they have in common, they can knock anybody on the planet out. I don't care what their class is, whether it's middleweight or heavyweight. These guys have dynamite in their hands. Let these guys go fight some of these other guys, the Israel Adesanyas, maybe the DeRitters or the Whitakers. Robert Whitaker, one of the best fighters to ever do it, is 9th. What a deep division you have. So there's a lot of interesting matchups out there. I just need to see the matchmaking come together. But yeah, sign me up for that Israel Adesanya Michael Page fight. Maybe somebody out there is listening, but that's the fight I want to see.
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention those two names next that you said earlier, Joe Pyfer and RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez. Those two have looked really, really good lately as well. And they're at the bottom of the division, 14 and 15. And it's crazy that fighters that are that good with that much momentum are ranked that low. That's because middleweight division is a very stacked division. I don't know if it's the most stacked division, but it's definitely towards the top. It's a really good division. You got Paulo Costa at number 13, who actually just pulled out of a fight. Apparently pulls out of fights a lot. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to really climb up the rankings at his pace, but it's still a name to consider. Dolidze, sorry. Some good names here.
I think it's the deepest just when I'm looking at 10 to 15 and all the other divisions. I'm just kind of taking a quick glance here. Yeah, to me, it is the deepest division just because Joe Pyfer, Paulo Costa, it's nuts. It's nuts. You have so many good fighters here.
Right. It's a really good division. So we want to see Izzy versus MVP, and we want to see RDR versus Caio. Those would be really fun fights. I think Izzy versus Venom Page could be kind of a hot take here. I think that could be a good main event for a fight night instead of a pay-per-view. Although I don't know I don't know if it's called pay-per-views anymore, but like your numbered, like your big events, your numbered events. But
I think they're going to go to that language. Yep. Numbered
right.
cards.
Right. And then your fight nights, the reason why is because Michael Page is not quite ranked high enough. I mean, he's still pay-per-view worthy, but I think that a fight against Izzy deserves to be like a main event fight. But Izzy being a former champion who is 0 and 1, 2, 3, 4 in when you're looking at like champions and former champions that are currently ranked in middleweight, you know, he's lost against all those guys. So I don't think that I think he's too big of a name to just put in the middle of an event. He deserves to be a main eventer, but not main event of pay-per-view, of course. So I think maybe you do like a fight night and have him versus Michael Venom Page. That would be a really good fight to headline an event like that. You could put Kaio and RDR either like a headline of a prelim on a pay-per-view or maybe like an opening fight. I think since they're both coming off of losses, maybe not quite pay-per-view worthy, but I think it's still a really good, potentially good fight. So you don't want to drop them too much in the position on a card, but some good fights there.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it. Page, he came over a little bit late, but he's 3-1, and these are the names he's beat. He beat Kevin Holland. He beat Shara Bullet, which was very impressive because Bullet was coming off a streak of his own. He was kind of coming up.
Bullet's still undefeated outside of that fight.
Yeah, and then Cannonier, who's a monster, even at his age, he brings it every time. His only loss was to Machado Gary. Machado Gary, who's top 3 in his division. Of course, we know Page bounces around from welterweight to middleweight.
Right.
But, definitely was better on the feet than Gary. He outstruck him in every aspect. It was just the grappling is what got him in that one. But, again, stylistically, you put him against a great striker in Israel, what's not to like? So.
It's fireworks, dude.
Yeah.
Speaking of fireworks, in my opinion, the most exciting division in all of the UFC when it comes to the strength of the title contenders that we have, it might not be the deepest from top to bottom, but when it comes to potential title contenders and champion and all that kind of stuff, in my opinion, the most exciting division to watch, welterweight division. So I don't know if you agree with me there. I think at the very least you would agree that it is up there.
Oh, it's 100% the most interesting. Just when you look at how many different people have realistic odds or chances to win the title. I mean, you got Islam, who's pound for pound number 1. We all acknowledge how great he is. But when you go down this list here, man, Jack Della Maddalena, Shavkat Rakhmonov, who I believe is still undefeated, Machado Gary. I mean, the records here, Morales is undefeated. Bilal Muhammad, I mean, he was just the champ. Carlos Prates, one of my personal favorites. He's really grown on me, despite everybody saying he's so cool. I just like his fighting style. Sean Brady, who I'm huge on. I still think he's a great fighter. He's a couple fights away from being back in the title. Kamaru Usman, who's number 8, who everyone has in the title fight against Islam right now, to Leon Edwards and even and Buckley at 10. And Buckley was on a tear until he fought Usman. So you have 10 guys right there, 11 when you count the champ, that within a fight or two could all have that belt, all of them. So it's just stupid stacked as far as title contenders go.
Yeah, there is a big drop-off when you get outside of 10, though, especially considering that Colby Covington. Why is Colby Covington still ranked? Can anyone tell me, anyone listening, send me a message and tell me why he's still ranked?
I'm going to answer your question with a question. Why is Michael Chandler ranked?
He shouldn't be. We'll get to that when we hit lightweight.
It's just eyeballs, man. It's dumb, but that's what it has to be. It's
Chandler moved up in the rankings after one of the recent events because like other people lost and went down. And so like, because they shifted down, it just shifted him up. But the dude's on like a losing streak and he went up in rankings. Yeah. I don't understand why Colby Covington Chandler. And I said this before on a few episodes back, like of all the names, like you could question and say why is this person here, why is this person there. No one's going to agree 100% with these rankings, but if you told me like what names just do not belong on this, when I bring up the UFC.com/rankings website and look at all of the names on here, sometimes the divisions are shallow, so understand why you have some not very good people in the rankings. I'm not going to argue against that, but those two names, Michael Chandler, Colby Covington, why in the hell are they on this page? They should not be ranked at all, and I will die on that hill. They shouldn't be on these rankings. Anyway, rant's over. Let's go to talking about these this title picture is, I think this is the most interesting title picture. Maybe not the most interesting division from 1 to 15, but the title picture, my goodness. I mean, Islam Makhachev, as you just said, pound for pound number one. At the very least, some people might argue that Chimaev is pound for pound number one. Look, Islam is still elite level in the pound for pound rankings. Just one-sided victory over JDM. And JDM had a pretty much one-sided win over Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad had beaten everybody for the last handful of years until he finally lost to JDM. You got Morales and Shavkat, who are both undefeated. Gary, whose only losses against Shavkat. Kalish Prates, who has, I think he has a few losses early in his career, but he hasn't lost at all in the UFC with the exception of Ian Gary. Sean Brady, who has a recent win against, who was it? He beat a former champion recently. I don't have his rankings in front of me.
Leon Edwards.
Leon Edwards, yeah. So, and then Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, they're both former champions. Like, these are all names that you could see being legitimate threats to the throne. Even if you think Islam would still win these fights, like, these are still all very exciting potential matchups. I think Joaquin Buckley, rounding out number 10, he's a good fighter, but I don't think he's at the level of the other 9, 10 if you count the champion. Oh, what is next for this title picture? So I'm going to say right now, Shavkat ranked at number 2, and he's undefeated. I've seen a lot of people say that, and even Islam said this, Shavkat should not get a title shot just yet. The reason why is because he's been so inactive. He did have an injury, to be fair, so it's like maybe something you shouldn't hold too much against him. But it should also be noted that because of his inactivity, he shouldn't just come back and then immediately jump into a title picture. I think Shavkat needs at least one more good big win against somebody. JDM just lost in a very one-sided fashion. So who do we have outside of that? I say Ian Gary, Morales. Muhammad lost to recently, so maybe Gary, Morales, and Prates, maybe the next 3 names to look at to challenge Islam. What do you think?
So Gary's beaten Prates, so I think Prates is going to be outside looking in as far as that goes. And of course, Ian lost to Shavkat, excuse me.
But Shavkat has been inactive though. So
right. So the way I see it is, I think you got to put him in there against maybe like a Bilal Muhammad, a top 5 guy who, if Bilal Muhammad beats him, puts himself in a position to be back in there, but not necessarily an automatic number 1, like you're going to fight Islam position. Because I do think Islam is going to fight Usman at the White House. I just believe that's going to be what's happening. Everybody's talking about it. And these things, when everyone's talking about it, they usually come together that way. They have the same agent. The agent's pushing that these guys fight each other, of course, because that's a massive payday for him. But that's just the way I kind of think that plays out. I think Usman gets beat by Islam. And then you're looking at a position where maybe Rakhmonov in the meantime is fighting like a Bilal Muhammad. He gets past him. I think he is the obvious title contender. He would be 20-0. And every win has been by decision. I'm sorry, been by finish, except I believe his last fight against Gary.
Yeah,
that went to a decision. So that's the only non-decision. I'm sorry, non-finish. We get my words mixed up. That's the only non-finish he's ever had in his whole career. So, if Gary were to fight somebody like Morales, who's undefeated, and he gets past him, it's so interesting because you could do this a bunch of different ways. I still think
that's a good fight.
That's a great fight. Yes. Prates maybe versus JTM. I heard he called out JDM the other day. If he gets to fight JDM and beats him, oh man, that's a great fight. And then, either way, JDM hadn't lost a fight in like 10 years until he fought Islam. I don't think he just automatically just gets moved all the way to the back of the line. But, you beat somebody like a Prates, you're right there. So, and this just goes a million different ways. Let's say Usman were to get past Islam. Well, then I think you have to have an immediate rematch. Maybe Islam gets his fight back. Maybe he moves back down to lightweight, potentially fighting someone else. Maybe it's a Poirier, what have you. We'll get there. But there is just so many intriguing things. And, all these fighters are 19-0 or 17-1. And it's just like, man, that you have so many good matchups at the top here. You can't go wrong. So I look forward to 2026. This division is the one I have my eyes on the closest, just because every other card you could see a big matchup or something with big implications.
Right. Yeah, I think the other big name to really pay attention to in this division is Michael Morales. I think if not for the whole White House card implications that everyone keeps talking about. If this was not a year where we're trying to do something like that, I think Morales would probably be the name that is probably most deserving to go against Islam, at least in my opinion. Gary has a loss. Shafkat's been inactive. I'd like to see Morales versus Islam. If nothing else, put Morales against someone else like JDM or something like that. Now, Carlos Prates, he does have his one loss against Ian Gary, but he's looked amazing in all of his other fights. So even with that one loss on his record, I still think he's not too far away. I say give him another good fight like Morales. So you mentioned JDM, how he called out JDM. I think if he beats JDM, he could also look at a title shot, because how many times we see someone like take a loss and then 2 fights later they're fighting for the title. It happens. It doesn't take a whole lot to get like a good win. We also mentioned in the last weight division Caio, and then this division Carlos Prates, and when we get to the next division we're going to be talking about Mauricio Ruffy. Those are all members of the Fighting Nerds, and I know once upon a time you were kind of really hyped on Hoofy, kind of like you were on Prates on being another potential title contender. And I'm not trying to jump the gun and go to the lightweight division, but I just want to say real quick, did you hear that Hoofy is leaving the Fighting Nerds?
I did.
That is crazy. Well, I guess we'll get to that when we hit lightweight, but it's just really interesting because Caio and Jean Silva, your other favorite guy, that's sarcasm, and Prates, like they had a very interesting and hyped team behind them in the Fighting Nerds. And I don't know what's going on with the Fighting Nerds. It might be something we could look into a little bit deeper, maybe cover another episode. Like, is there something going on in the Fighting Nerds? Why is Hoofy leaving them? Because he was kind of a staple member of them. But anyway, that's jumping the gun. Let's focus on this weight division. So yeah, I would like to see Morales is the next big name to come up. Islam is just a king right now, though, so there's just so many potential fights to talk about. We could sit here, like I mentioned earlier, I could talk an hour on middleweight. I could also talk an hour on welterweight. There's just so many different potential matchups. I think title picture-wise, this is the most exciting division. I think we're going to see a lot of really, really good fights in 2026 for this division.
Yep, it's the division to keep an eye on for sure.
If you see a welterweight fight mentioned on an event and it has 2 people that are in the top 10 or even top 15, but mostly top 10 that are in the welterweight division, make sure you watch those fights. They're all going to be really fun.
Yeah, because even like if you took 9 versus 10, that would be better than any other 9 versus 10. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's that deep. So yeah, for sure.
It's crazy. So anyway, that's really all I got on welterweight. Ready to jump into lightweight?
Yes, sir.
Now, I mentioned that welterweight with Islam has the most exciting title picture. I think this one has the most confusing, interesting, odd, hard to pin down title picture. Currently.
Yeah, I agree. I had it right there with light heavyweight as kind of like a question mark. And
this is a very deep division as well. I think this is one of the more exciting divisions in all the UFC currently. Might be the deepest if you talk 1 to 15, could be the deepest, but like the title picture is kind of in a weird flux right now. So just to kind of summarize, you have Ilya Topuria, who's the champion. There are rumors of him vacating or being stripped because he says he's not going to be able to fight for a while because he's going through some personal issues. So you have Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett are going to be fighting. Currently, it's listed as an interim title fight, but maybe that's going to change if they look at stripping or having Ilya vacate. Arman Tsarukyan has been ranked number 1 forever, but he is kind of not in UFC's good graces, so it seems like they're not really going to push him. You have Max Holloway, who's a current BMF title. So the BMF title, as fun as it is basically the title for people that you just don't think are going to win the actual like weight division title. It's just a fun side title. So when you have Max Holloway ranked at number 3 holding that title, you don't see him going for the lightweight division championship. You have Charles Oliveira, who's a former champion, but he's already had a few recent opportunities to get that title and he's lost them. And he is going to be competing against Max Holloway for the BMF title. So basically, when you look at 2 and 3, they're out of the conversation. We look at 1, Arman Tsarukyan, he's not out of the conversation, but they're really slow tracking him to that title. Paddy and Justin fighting for the interim. And then outside of that, you have some really good names, but it's really weird because when you look at 6 through 15, you have a lot of really good fighters and a lot of them have fought against each other, but it's kind of hard to say who really is the one that's coming out on top because there's been a lot of rock, paper, scissors. Like A's beat B, B has beat C, and C has beat A. There's been a lot of those situations where that's happened. So it's like, who really deserves to be getting pushed of those names? So it's kind of a weird division to look at currently. I mean, an example of that is you got Benoit Saint Denis beat Moicano. I'm sorry, not Moicano. Benoit Saint Denis beat Dariush. Dariush beat Moicano. Moicano beat Benoit Saint Denis. That's just an example right there. So it's kind of a weird state on who really needs to get the big push when you get outside of 5. And then 4 and 5 are going for an interim title. We don't know what's going on with the champion. The number 1 contender is not getting his push. Number 2 and 3 are stuck in the BMF division or BMF title picture. So it's kind of a weird state to be in, this whole title picture. So how do you think 2026 is going to play out for the lightweight title picture?
So we've seen a lot of turnover and a lot of fluctuation with people in these rankings. Of course, Dustin Poirier is no longer part of this division. Justin Gaethje was just this close to not even be on the roster anymore. And he's fighting Paddy Pimblett. I think Pimblett gets past Gaethje. If this fight was 5 years ago, I'd tell you otherwise. But I think Pimblett at this point in his career is primed to beat Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje's had a hell of a career, but he's been through a whole lot of wars. I don't see him getting past Paddy. If he beat him, it wouldn't shock me, but I just don't see it playing out that way. And so, like you said, Oliveira and Holloway are going to fight for like a side belt, essentially. They're ranked 2 and 3, but they're really not in contention. They have their own thing going on. The loser kind of just eliminates himself automatically. The winner kind of eliminates themselves automatically because they're not going to tie the 2 belts together. That's why you'll never see a BMF belt holder fight a title holder for that division because ultimately they'll unify the belts and then you lose the whole aura of that belt. So that'll never happen. So if you have that in the back of your head, to me, you just have to look at the obvious. There's a big one by Arman Sarukian. And I know that he's messed up before. I know he pulled out of a fight right before it was supposed to happen. And there is nothing that's going to get under Dana White's nerves more than that. Don't ruin his show, his production. But at some point, you can't ignore it. I think Arman Sarukian is going to get the winner of what I think will be Paddy and Ilya. I do think Ilya gets past him. And this is a bold one for me. I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here. I think Arman gets his shot just because there is no other obvious guys. Look at Dan Hooker, who's number 6, who just got pummeled by Arman Sarukian. There's no chance he's getting back in there. Hooker beat Gamrot, who's number 7. So to your point, all these guys have kind of beaten each other up. Arman Sarukian is the only guy who's come out of this thing clean. Like he's beaten Charles Oliveira, and if he goes in there and beats Paddy Pimblett, if he goes in there and faces the winner of Paddy Pimblett versus Ilya, it just makes sense. You just have to do it. I don't really see there being any other way around it. Ilya's got his personal issues. There's a chance, like you said, Ilya gets stripped, and then you really have a division in flux where it's like, well, who does Paddy fight? It has to be Arman Sarukian. At some point, you cannot ignore that man. And so I just think Arman's going to be the guy that holds the belt at the end of the year. So that's definitely me going out on a little bit of a limb because he's not in good graces with the UFC. And obviously he's not even wearing a belt. He doesn't even have a title fight that's projected for him at this point. He's just kind of out of the picture, but I think in 365 days, we're going to be looking at a whole new champ and have a whole new perspective on this division.
Right. And I'm looking at some of the names that are further down the rankings, like past, 8, 9, 10. Who are the other people I think might be able to get some wins and work their way up through the rankings over this next year and become a title contender? And some of these names could have a lot of potential, like Hoofy's coming off a loss, but maybe he could, bring himself back up. You have Torres and Ziam. Dariush, I think he's on his way out. Moicano has, for the most part, looked pretty good. Maybe he could try to work his way back up, but maybe not. Fizzy's kind of inconsistent. But when I look at all these names, I have a question. I'm a little confused by this. Can you answer this for me?
Let's see what you got.
Why is Michael Chandler ranked?
Yeah, man. It's just a bad look on the UFC. Whoever's coming up with these rankings, I'd like to hear somebody have a press conference and just explain everything. And I wouldn't really give much pushback on anybody on any of these lists, but the 2 we mentioned earlier, Covington and Chandler, it's like, what are we doing here? Like,
Right.
explain that to me. Like, I'm 5. Like, make it make sense. Talk to me.
Right.
Because
So
I don't get it.
Like, let me jump back to the heavyweight rankings real quick. You look at like Taito Vaso has a whole bunch of losses, but the thing is, the division's so shallow that they don't really have anyone else. There's a few other names I think could be better that are lower ranked, but they haven't fought anyone. So it makes sense with the people that Ty has fought for his name to at least be in the rankings, even though I don't think he's the best. I look at the name and I understand why his name exists in the rankings, at least to a point. But those two, Colby and Michael, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I have no clue.
But anyway, that side tangent aside, yeah, I think of all of the title divisions that we're looking at. I keep saying title divisions, like the title pictures in each division. I think this is the one that's probably going to be the most different at the end of 2026. You're going to have some of these champions are still going to be championing at the end of it. Some are going to lose their titles, but you're still going to see a lot of the same names towards the top. I think that lightweight is the one that's probably we should take a screenshot and say, December 2025, this is what it looked like. And let's go back December 2026 and just see how different it is. Because I think this one's going to move around the most, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Who knows? Chandler might be ranked number 3 at the end of 2026 because he'll get like one win. He'll lose 3 fights and then get like one win against someone who's half decent, and they're going to promote him to 3 and give him a title shot. That's what it seems like. He's got someone in his pocket, I swear.
Yeah, and not to hate on Patty. I know Patty's well liked and received, but Patty's kind of the same way in the sense that, he was inactive, and you'd see like every other week, like, oh, he moved up. Like he went from like 9th to 5th, and he didn't do anything. It's just, oh, Patty keeps moving up and up and up. And clearly they want to kind of promote him, and obviously he's getting his big shot now. So it's just funny how the UFC, they make it pretty apparent who they like and who they don't like.
Right. All right. Moving right along, we got the featherweight division. This is another one that's pretty interesting. So the big elephant in the room is you have the current champion Volkanovski, but he had the title, he lost the title, that champion vacated, moved to a different weight class, and then he regained the title back. So I don't know if everybody is quite as hyped on his name as some of these other champions. Like when that happens, it's kind of unfortunate. You lose to somebody and then they leave, so you can't avenge the loss and you get the title back. Some people are not going to have as much respect behind your name, and I think that's kind of what's going on with Volkanovski. Arguably the greatest featherweight champion of all time, if not at least one of the greatest featherweight champions of all time. But he's kind of in a weird state right now where it's clear that he is nearing the end of his career. He did regain the title. He was 0-2 against Islam, and he lost against Ilia Topuria as well. So he's 0-3 against other champions that are on this list. But he's still holding the title, and I'm looking at, this list of names. A lot of these people that are in the top 15, he's already beat. Some other people just don't look good enough to compete for a title. And it looks like his next fight is against Diego Lopez, who he beat to regain the title when it was vacant. I don't know. This one's also a bit of a weird title picture. I'm not quite sure how things are going to play out in 2025. I know it's already been booked. We're starting with the rematch between Lopez and Volkanovski. And I already said that I think that it's too soon for Lopez, but nothing I could do about that now. How do you think this division plays out?
Yeah, another interesting title picture. I think Volk's going to get past Lopez here. I just think the fight IQ is the difference. It's not that Lopez doesn't have the heart, because he clearly does.
Oh yeah.
It's not that he doesn't have the dog in him. He clearly does. But I just think Volk is just a step ahead. He's like a supercomputer. He processes everything. He's already fought him once. I think he'll look even sharper. Even though he's getting older, I just think that's the big advantage he has in that fight. So I would look for him to get past there. But there are interesting names in the division. Mavzar Evlov, he rarely fights, but of course he should be back in the picture. Yair Rodriguez, we've talked about that a couple of times. He's a guy who's number 3, and he could potentially be right there. Lerone Murphy, one of my personal favorites. I think he deserves a title shot next year. I think he'll get one. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb. I know it may not seem like it because Volk's getting older, and we know what age says, especially for the lighter weights. but I just think his brain is going to be what gets him through next year. I think he's going to get through it. Not super confident. If he were to fight Murphy, I don't even know if he'd be favored. I mean, that's just how good I think Lerone Murphy is. And of course, Evlov, again, he's right there. So it's a tough division, but I think he's got one more year, 2 or 3 good fights left in him, and then hopefully he hangs it up when he's still on top.
Right. You mentioned him possibly facing Yair at some point. He's already faced and beat Yair, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean more like a Yair. If he were to fight Diego coming off a loss to Volk, he could kind of prop himself. Yair's number 3, so he's one top 5 win away from being right there too.
And I've already said this. I think that the fight to make should have actually been Diego versus Yair, and then the winner of that would probably move up to face Volkanovski.
And I agree.
I think it was just a bit too soon for Diego, but I've already said all that. I don't need to repeat it. I actually hope Diego Lopez wins, and this is nothing against Volkanovski. I love Volk. He's from like a personality standpoint, an exciting fighter standpoint, there's nothing to not like about Volkanovski. But I think it's kind of a situation, like I mentioned with the heavyweights, when you have like names that are kind of floating around in a position where you want to see stuff shaken up. You want to see like some new names come up. I think it would be better for the division if Diego Lopez wins. Now, it doesn't mean that it will happen. I just think if Diego maybe comes back with a better game plan, like you mentioned, there's the fight IQ. Diego Lopez is a good fighter. It seemed like he was a bit trigger shy, gun shy in the fight against Volkanovski. If he comes back with a better game plan, maybe he's a bit more aggressive, and if he does get the win, I think that would be better for the division. I think a lot of the ideas behind a lot of the what you expect to see on the horizon is going to very much depend on who wins in this fight. Volkanovski wins, it's going to be another thing of him possibly facing people he's already faced before, and maybe the division gets a little slower. I think if Diego does win, it sets up a lot of new potential exciting fights to see. So hopefully Diego pulls it off just for that sake alone, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We shall see. And then outside of that, you mentioned Lerone Murphy. He's looked fantastic. Like, he doesn't just win. He dominates people. He makes it really exciting. Aljamain Sterling has moved up from bantamweight, and he's trying to work his way into the title picture. Maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. He still is pretty good, but I don't know. We shall see. And then when you get outside of 5, I don't really see any of these names being a big threat. Brian Ortega, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he cut from the UFC? I guess they rehired him, because I know after he lost his last fight against who was it he lost to? I can't even remember off the top of my head.
I can find it for you.
But he lost his match, and then I think they had to change weight classes.
To Sterling.
It was to Sterling. Yeah, after he lost that fight, I'm pretty sure I saw that it was announced that the UFC had cut him. But I see he's back in the rankings and is getting a fight booked again, so maybe they rehired him, or the cut was a rumor. I don't know. And then going down the list, you have Jean Silva, who, even though he got demolished by Diego Lopez, he's still a pretty strong name. But going down, you have got fighters who are good, but their glory days are long behind them, like Josh Emmett. I love Josh Emmett fights. He's great. He's fun to watch. But he's a journeyman at this point. Patricia Pitbull, his glory days behind him. Danny Gay, he occasionally gives us good fights, but for the most part, he's a journeyman as well. So, yeah, I think the big names to look at this year, Arnold Allen, I think shouldn't be slept on. And then Lerone Murphy, Yair Rodriguez, Diego Lopez, and Evlov. Avoyev. I don't know how to say these names, man.
I think it's Evlov, but yeah, I mean, I agree. And nothing on Arnold Allen or Aljamain, but really, I would kind of cap it at 4. I think you're looking at the guy holding the belt at the end of next year is going to be somewhere in that top 4.
Right. I really do hope Diego wins, just so we have more exciting potential matchups in the future. I still want to see Diego versus Yair more than any fight. When I look at all the names in the top 15,
I agree.
I want to see Diego versus Yair, because they had that beef at the press conference where it was Diego versus Volkanovski part 1, and they had that back and forth. They had to get separated. They're in the same weight class. They're both ranked close to each other. Why was that fight not made? I don't understand it. But I want to see that fight.
Gift wrap. It was gift wrap for him.
Because if Diego loses, let's pretend for a minute, Diego loses Volkanovski in the rematch, and Yair fights whoever, another good name, and wins, I could see him leapfrog Diego, and so we don't even get that fight. So
Well, and you said demolish Gene Silva, and he did win in spectacular fashion, but that was a hell of a fight. Who would want to see that as a rematch? Gene Silva's not in good graces. I get it. But we're talking about this guy who's number 10 and really I think is more of a top 5 caliber fighter. He's just
yeah.
not in the good graces. Man, if those two decide to tie it up again at some point next year, sign me up. That was a top 3 or 4 fight of the year this year. That was fantastic. So I'd love to see that again.
Silva is a bit of a lunatic, and he's definitely like the least lovable of the fighting nerds. Kind of
For sure.
Kind of a brash personality that doesn't sit well with people. But at the end of the day, like when the dude gets in the octagon, he is fun to watch. Period. What regardless of what your opinions on him are personally, he's fun to watch. Like he
brings it, man.
Right. He could grapple. He could strike. He has a very tough pace.
He's vicious.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's basically featherweight in a nutshell. So let's move right along. We got bantamweight. This division was the division to watch in 2025 because you had Merab Dvalishvili was on a record run when it comes to amount of title defenses in a single year. And he was set up to probably set the record, probably that we'll ever see in UFC history when it comes to the most successful title defenses of all time in a single year. But he ended up losing in his last match. And I think this could actually be a good thing for the bantamweight division only because it opens up a lot more potential fights when we have Petr Yan beat Merab. What's your thoughts on the bantamweight title picture?
I think you're looking at a rematch. I've heard some people say there shouldn't be a rematch, but you don't always get an automatic rematch if you're a title holder and you lose, even if it's close. You don't always get that. In fact, you rarely do. But when you've had the run that Merab had, you deserve a rematch, man. Like you've held that crown. And then think about it. That was his 4th fight in the year. So he's not only fighting, he's fighting a lot. You know, the activity level's off the charts. He should be rewarded for that. He shouldn't be, he shouldn't be put in the corner for that. So I do believe he gets that rematch at the White House. And I do believe Petr Yan wins again. Petr Yan, even in their first contest, showed really, really good takedown defense. And so, of course, Merab's game plan is I'm going to get you on the ground, I'm going to get you on the ground, I'm going to get you on the ground. Yan has proven that he is not easy to bring to the ground, and his striking is off the charts. It's so much better than Merab's. Merab's improved, but the striking's not even close. So if Yan can keep it standing, he's going to have his way again. I think there's a couple names to watch. Umar, who I'm a big fan of, I'm bullish on him. I think he's a top 10 guy. Of course, y'all have heard me say Corey Sandhagen is a top 10 guy. I just think this division is loaded with killers. But you do have a fight right now in O'Malley and Song Yadong, which is a top 5 matchup. O'Malley is one of these guys in the good graces of the UFC. I could very likely see the winner of that fight, especially if it's O'Malley, going on to fight the winner of Merab and Yan. And so I think you're looking at like a Yan. I'm going to say O'Malley gets past Song Yadong. So you're looking at like an O'Malley fight towards the end of the year, maybe versus Petr Yan. I thought Petr Yan, they fought at UFC 280. I thought Petr Yan won that fight as well. I rewatched it recently. Came away thinking the same thing. Very close fight, though. Very entertaining fight. Would love to watch that fight again. I think the whole world would like to see that fight again. But I did think Yan won that fight, man. It was 1 versus 12, and we talk about fast-tracking guys like Pereira. O'Malley was number 12. He was fighting the number 1 guy, and then he got the win in a close decision. I'm just like, I don't know about that. But regardless, I think that's kind of what we're looking at. And then, just to go down the list like we've been doing, one of my all-time favorites, Marlon Vera, he's just out of it at this point. Batista is a interesting name, but I don't think he brings a lot of eyeballs. But the one guy that I am looking at is Peyton Talbot. Peyton Talbot could absolutely climb into the top 5 by the end of next year with an outside chance of having a title fight presented. Peyton Talbot's a young prospect who just had his way with Triple C, Henry Cejudo, made him look pretty bad. I mean, not that Triple C looked bad in his heart or his effort, but just skill-wise, it was pretty interesting to see Peyton Talbot take this man down to the mat time after time and then just beat him up on the feet. He's a guy with size and length. I think he could be somebody who could shoot up, but ultimately, I think you're looking at like a Yan O'Malley situation towards the end of the year, and I think Petr Yan's that guy right now. He hasn't lost since March of 23, and he's just getting better and better. The way he's grown from his last Merab fight to the one he just had was leaps and bounds. He's very impressive, and he's in his prime. I think he's the guy.
Yeah, so I agree with you at the beginning of your take there that you got to do the rematch with Marab because with the run that he had, he was, in contention for a fighter of the year, champion of the
For
year. The
sure.
dude, Pantoja had a longer title run when it comes to title defenses overall, but when you talk about the activity level, Marab, 2025 was the year of Marab. I mean, you could argue it was the year of Islam because he went and captured another title, but if you look at just activity, like who was drawing in the most names and getting the most wins and really leading the charge for dominant champions in 2025, 2025 was the year of Marab. So even though it ended with him losing, people forget that this was actually the second fight that he had with Piotr Jan. So they're 1-1 with each other. Dude, let's have the trilogy. Let's do the trilogy in early 2026 when both these guys are ready to go.
Yep.
I mean, you got names like Umar and Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley, like you said before, had a very close fight with Piotr Jan. That was a split decision that some people thought Piotr should have won. Yeah, these are all potential names. I think what we should probably see if I was matchmaking is Marab versus Jan in the rematch to wrap up the trilogy. If Jan wins, we could set up a rematch with Sean O'Malley. You have other names that hasn't faced him yet, like no, I'm sorry, I was about to say Corey Sandhagen, but it looks like Jan has fought Corey Sandhagen. But you still have some other good names here. You have Song Yudong and Sean O'Malley are fighting. The winner of that fight, could potentially, get a title shot. Figgy looked really good in his last win. When I go outside of the top 10, when I go outside of the top 8, I look at Batista and Talbot you mentioned earlier. I'm surprised they're ranked this low. Maybe Talbot's ranked this low because he's newer and hasn't fought as many big names. His biggest name that he's fought and won against was in his last fight against Henry Cejudo, who's not even ranked currently. But Batista's looked really good. He has a lot of really big wins, so I'm kind of surprised he's ranked this low. I think he should be closer to 5. But still, yeah, there's a lot of potential for some good fights here. But I think what we're going to see in 2026 for this division is we're going to see the trilogy between Jan and Marab, and then the winner of Sean O'Malley and Song Yudong is coming up, and then Umar's still in the mix, Corey Sandhagen's still in the mix. So those are the names to look out for in the bantamweight division.
Yep, I agree.
All right, and then moving right along to flyweight, we got Joshua Van, the new champion, going against Pantoja, won by a freak injury. So
super freak injury.
Yeah, and was it like 16 seconds or something like that?
22 seconds.
22 seconds? Sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I was spitballing from memory. So anyway, this is a name that I think of all the champions currently on here, this is the champion that probably has the least prestige behind his name because A, he's newer, and B, he didn't beat he didn't just go in and dominate and win in some type of fashion. It was not much had happened in just those few seconds, and then Pantoja landed funny and broke his arm. So a lot of people were like, he's only the champion off of a technicality. Pantoja, if he's healthy and comes back, is going to dominate him. I don't know. We shall see. I don't know how long Pantoja is going to be out because of this injury. I've seen some people say that an injury like this is going to take long enough that he might not fight in 2026. If he does, it'll be the end of 2026. So basically, Van's next opponent needs to be someone that is not Pantoja, has to be someone that's ranked 2 and on. And when I look at all these names, the only name that really sticks out, the only name that makes sense for him to fight and to start off for his title defenses in 2026 is terrible human being and known eye poke aficionado Manel Kopp, the dirtiest player in the game.
I thought that was Ric Flair.
This is the modern day dirtiest player in the game, Manel Kopp.
All right.
Manel Kopp and Van have already had some back and forth online beef with each other, which, helps excite things. But Kopp, as much as I hate to admit it, looked fantastic against Royval. And then other names, Royval and Moreno, these guys are, they're good fighters, but, I'm looking down the rest of these names. So a lot of these names I don't really recognize because this division's a bit more on the shallow side, so I haven't really seen a lot of fights between them. But the other names that I do recognize, you got like Steve Erceg, Tim Elliott, and Bruno Silva. Like, these are names that they win some, they lose some. They're journeymen. They give us exciting fights. Like, I'm a huge fan of Royval and Moreno. They're two of my favorite fighters in the UFC when it comes to just exciting fights. But they've had a lot of losses lately. Royval did not look good at all against Kopp. Tatsuro Taira looks really good, but I think he needs one more good win before he's in title contention. I think the only thing really to talk about is Kopp versus Van. That's all we have.
Yeah.
We gotta wait for Pantoja to heal up from injury. The only fight to make that we have is Manel Kopp versus Joshua Van. So
That's the slam dunk fight to make. You make that fight and you feel good about it. And, basically what I'm looking at, I was reading, I guess maybe the same stuff you were looking at when it comes to the title picture and it comes to, where Pantoja is going to be in 26 in regards to that title frame. It looks like he could be out all of 26 or come right back at the very end, like you were saying. If he's back and healthy at the end of 26, maybe he fights the winner of those two guys. Maybe those guys have another fight in between. I don't know. But I would take a healthy Pantoja over anybody. It's just, will he be healthy? And so that's really the ultimate question. Van, and if it turns out to be like a Van Royval rematch towards the end of the year, if Royval beats somebody, maybe it's a Tatsuro Taira or somebody like that to put himself right back into relevance. That was the fight of the year by all accounts. So a rematch of that wouldn't hurt my feelings. That was beyond entertaining. I'd watch that every day of the week if I could. It was that good. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. Moreno's been one of my longstanding favorites as well. He's always relevant. His losses, he never really gets dominated or finished. It's always a decision. So if he were to be back in the title fight against Van or something like that, that would be interesting. But nearsightedness, it's got to be Manel Kopp and Joshua Van. It just has to. I'll be rooting for Van hardcore, but if he's not getting his eyes gouged out, I think he wins the fight.
I think this is basically flyweight for 2026 in a nutshell, as we just all agreed on. Manel Kopp versus Van is the fight to make. And then the other big name to look at is Tatsuro Taira, because he is 18-1 overall. His only loss is against Brandon Royval, who we just mentioned, who gave us fight of the year against Van, but also lost to Manel Kopp in a knockout first round.
Yep.
So basically, the only way I see things playing out is you have Kopp versus Van, and then also in the meantime have Tatsuro Taira versus Brandon Royval rematch. The reason why is to kind of keep Taira active and see if he could get that win back. If Taira does get that win back, he's ranked above him because he has more momentum behind his name, but he does have a loss against him. If Taira could avenge his loss, that means he's beaten everybody he's faced in the UFC, and that would give him a strong argument to get a fight against the champion, regardless if it's Kopp or Van. It wouldn't matter. And then when all of the dust settles there, then when Pantoja comes back healthy, he could go against whoever is king of the hill when all that's said and done. The big weird one would be, though, if Kopp beats Van and Royval wins in this hypothetical rematch against Taira, do we see Royval versus Kopp part 2, even though he got knocked out in the first round? I don't know. That would be the hardest sell to make if it plays out that way. But if it doesn't play out that way, I think it's very easy. You look at those 4 names, have them fight each other, and then whoever's king of the hill, when it's all said and done, Pantoja comes back and faces the winner. I think that's how it plays out in 2026.
I agree. Do a little round robin and then have the rightful champ come back.
Right.
I agree.
So that's it for the men's divisions. This is going to be where a lot of people turn off the podcast because people just don't pay attention to women's MMA. We got to talk about those divisions as well. And these are going to be a lot shorter. There's not a whole lot to talk about. So you got women's bantamweight, current champion Kayla Harrison, and it's already in the works that she's going to be facing the former champion who's coming out of retirement. The MMA GOAT, the women's MMA GOAT.
Sign me up for Nunes, man. Kayla's great. The American gold medalist, all the things, right? We love Kayla Harrison. I don't know how she ever makes that weight. It's beyond. I don't even understand it. But anyway, all that to say, you're fighting Amanda Nunes, and I'm sorry, but I can't get it out of my head. The last time she fought, I didn't know she was retiring. I don't even know who she fought. I forget the girl's name. But
Juliana Pena. You talking about Harrison or Or
Nunes.
Nunez.
No,
Oh, Nunez.
no, and it wasn't Pena. It was somebody else. But
No, no.
anyway,
I thought you were talking about Harrison. That's why I said Nunez. But
oh
I know,
yeah,
I know
yeah.
you're talking about, yeah.
And I mean, it was like I was fighting a third grader. I mean, it really was. It was that crazy. It was the difference was that vast.
It
And
was
so
Irene Ildana.
Irene Aldana
Aldana.
got destroyed. She should have got 2 paychecks for
And that was in
beatdown.
2023. It does not feel
Yeah.
that long ago. That's 2.5 years ago. It says the summer 2023.
Yeah, yeah. And she laid down the belts right after and the gloves and the whole thing. But that performance has stuck in my head so much. Like, this is a title contender, no matter who her name is, if you know about her or don't. This is somebody who's earned a shot at the title and just got completely beat down. And so, Amanda, if she's been in the gym, working out, training, and stayed in shape, she's not too old. And so to think like she can't go in there and beat Kayla Harrison, sure, Kayla Harrison has a great chance. She's very, very talented and gifted. We know about her history and her past, but I'm still picking Amanda Nunes, man. I mean, to me, that is the GOAT. And if she's in shape, I'm riding with the GOAT, man.
Yeah, so Harrison has looked really good. Nunez, as we know, is the women's MMA GOAT. I'm looking at the odds right now, and Harrison's the favorite. Not by
Sign
a lot.
me up.
Not
Sign
by
me up.
not by a
Take my
ton.
money.
It's not by a ton, but she is the favorite. Outside of this title fight, you don't really have a whole lot. You have Juliana Pena, who's still ranked number 1 because she's the most recent champion.
If Amanda wins, that's a trilogy you could, people would watch that. I'd watch that.
Yeah. I don't know if Nunez wants to do that, but I mean,
Yeah,
I
she
still
may
see. I still think she would win. I just think she's just not interested. It's kind of like when Dustin Poirier said he'd have no interest in doing a 4th fight with Conor. It has nothing to do with like him being afraid to
Yeah.
fight him. It's like, what do I get
done
out
it.
of it? You know.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those situations. But yeah, outside of that title fight, there's not a whole lot to say. You got Juliana Pena and Raquel Pennington are 1 and 2 who, had recently fought for titles. And when you go outside of, you got the returning champion, the current champion, and those 2 names. Outside of those names, it's a whole bunch of nothing. A whole bunch of nothing.
Right.
I mean, you talk about like Misha Tate. I'm surprised she's still in the ranking. She's ranked number 13, and there's a whole bunch of other names like I've seen fight before, but like I can't even picture in my head what they look like. Most of these people, with the exception of Macy Chasson because she's from Louisiana. We pay attention to all the Louisiana fighters, but outside of that, like, oh, and also Myra Bueno Silva. I know that name. I know what she looks like. I could actually picture her in my head. A lot of these names, I see the name, like I know the name, but I can't visualize them because they're so inactive and so just not relevant in the division. So, yeah, it's pretty weak division overall. Most of these divisions, the women's divisions, you have a few really strong fighters at the very top, and then it's just a massive drop off. So, moving on to the next division, you got, because I don't think there's much else to talk about women's bantamweight. You look at flyweight, you have Shevchenko just defended against the former champion of strawweight, Zhang Weili. What do you do with Shevchenko next? I don't know if she has anything booked. She did go 1-1-1 with Grasso, but Grasso has not looked good in her fight since then.
Well, so the big rumor, not that I'm Mr. Women's MMA, but I do know this much. They're talking about Natalia Silva, who's actually fighting at the next fight card, UFC 324, January 24th. She is going to be going up against, I just had it. Let's see. She's going up against Rose Namajunas. And so that's one of those classic situations where, okay, we beat a Rose Namajunas. She's coming off a win against Alexa Grasso, which is a big feather in her cap as well. And so there's really not a whole lot you can do with this division, in my opinion. But if Silva were to get past Rose, who's 6th in the division at this point, yeah, I mean, she's number 2 right now. That kind of cements her spot against Shevchenko. They're trying to fast track her a little bit, it looks like. Maybe she gets it done. She beat Jessica Andrade a couple fights back as well. So she's gotten some big names under her belt. That's kind of the picture, though. Valentina Shevchenko, Natalia Silva, if Silva were to get past Rose. If not, I don't know. That's my expertise. I don't know.
Right.
But it looks like Silva's the fast track, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these names. I know Erin Blanchfield has a good bit of wins lately, so she's going to be a notable name. You already mentioned Natalia Silva. You have Manon Fiorot, who is currently ranked number 1, and she is 13-2 in her overall record, which in women's MMA is actually pretty solid. But one of her recent losses was to Shevchenko, and it was already for the title. So if they fight again, it's just going to be a rematch. So I think we need to see maybe another fight from her before we give her another title shot. She has fought once since then. She beat Jasmine, Jasudavicius. Want to pronounce that one for me?
Sadavicious.
Sure. Yes. So, yeah, she's also beat Erin Blanchfield and Rose Namajunas. So, actually managed pretty good. She had a pretty good record, but she does have a recent loss against Valentina. Maybe give her another win another fight against someone who she hasn't fought, maybe a Grasso, since they haven't fought yet. And we see a rematch. Yeah, and Natalia Silva is pretty much the other name to look at. So, yeah. Not a whole lot to talk about in that one. I think when it comes to women's divisions, I think the most interesting one when it comes to potential title contenders and potential fights, exciting fights, is actually women's strawweight for a few reasons. So you have Zhang Weili, who vacated the title so she could challenge at flyweight. So she never lost her title. And we all know how amazing her run was in that title division. You have Tatiana Suarez, who has otherwise not lost to anybody with the exception against Zhang Weili. Verna Jandiroba has looked really, really good. She is 0-2 against current champion Mackenzie Dern, but I still think that she's really good. Yan Xiaonan's kind of hit or miss. Amanda Lemos has looked really good in some of her fights. I think she does have a recent loss, but when she wins really good. I could say the same thing about Lupi Godinez. So really the top 6 are actually all pretty good names. I think this is the deepest of the women's divisions. I think you have, even going further down the rankings, when I look at names like Tabitha Ritchie, Jisha Andrade, Jillian Roberts, these are all women. One of the problems with this division is a lot of these names I just mentioned have faced each other, and it's more examples of, like I said, another division where it's like you've seen situations where fighter A is beat B, B is beat C, and C is beat A, so it's like who really deserves to be on top. But they're all still pretty good fighters that do give pretty exciting fights, that do have some good notable wins. So I think we have more potential for, fights that make sense in 2026.
Yeah.
So I think, assuming that Zhang Weili says, okay, clearly flyweights not for me, let me go back to strawweight. So she's going to go back and challenge for the title. So that's how we're probably going to start in 2026. We're going to see Zhang Weili versus Mackenzie Dern. I don't see any universe where Mackenzie Dern wins that fight.
Mama's coming home.
Dude, never say never. I've seen bigger upsets. I told the world that there's absolutely no way that Sean Strickland would ever beat Israel Adesanya, but I was very, very wrong. I think that was my boldest wrong prediction I've ever made. If Dern beats Weili, that would be probably the newest, boldest claim that I'm wrong on. I just don't see Weili losing that fight. But let's say Weili does not challenge immediately, or let's say Weili somehow loses that match. Tatiana Suarez, who's not lost any match ever with the exception of Zhang Weili, I could see her fighting Mackenzie Dern. I think she could probably beat Mackenzie Dern. I still say Verna Jandiroba is a threat to Dern, even though she's 0-2 against her. It's still have been
close.
Competitive. They were competitive in their close fights. I can't recall if Yan Xiaonan has fought Mackenzie Dern. Yan Xiaonan's an interesting fighter because she does have a handful of losses, so you don't think she's quite at that level, but she also has, when she does win, she tends to win pretty big. I think she gave Zhang Weili a very competitive fight at UFC 300, and a fight that I swear is one of the most underrated fights ever, because people are paying attention to the fight before it and after it, and don't pay attention to that fight. I think that was one of the most exciting fights of the year between Yan Xiaonan and Zhang Weili. So Yan Xiaonan, I could see possibly being a fun fight if somehow Dern is able to hold on to the title for a while. Let's say she gets through Weili and Suarez. We could probably see that one. I think we'd sooner see that before Verna Part 3. Let's see if they fought already, because I can't honestly recall if Dern and Yan Xiaonan have fought already. Let me pull up her list real quick. Let's see. They have fought. Interesting. Yan Xiaonan has already beat Mackenzie Dern. I did not know that. I can't keep track of all these fights. So, yeah, we could probably see a rematch between Yan and Dern. Suarez, a very dangerous name here. She's not out of the running for sure. Weili coming home to her division could really make things interesting. So I see a lot of potential fights here. I think First off, we need to find out, is Zhang coming back to strawweight, and is she challenging for the title immediately? We have to figure that out first because nothing's been announced. So we don't know. It's all speculation. I think it is the play. I agree with you. But at this point, it's still speculation until it's announced. Right. And then after that, yeah, there's a lot of potential good fights here. I think I'd actually be pretty excited to see Yan Xiaonan and Mackenzie Dern fight because Xiaonan is, when it comes to like an entertainment perspective, I think is one of the more entertaining fighters in the division. A lot more entertaining than Tatiana Suarez. Suarez, as good as she is, she's just kind of like WrestleFest, you know?
Right.
It's not the kind of wrestling where she takes you down and submits you and does a bunch of crazy ground and pound. It's mostly
the Almeida wrestling.
It pretty much is. I'd still say she's more exciting than Almeida, but not by a ton. Yeah. So yeah, I think we could actually get some good fights out of this one. But first, we need to see what are Zhang's plans. That's where we got to start, and then we see how things play out from there. So
I think China comes back to invade the White House, and Zhang Weili gets her belt.
I'll be honest with you, even though Dern's champion, and I'm not trying to hate on her, I do think that she does have talent. I think she loses to most of the people that are in the top 5. Like even though she's 2-0 over Verna, it's still like when I look at all the other fights that they have, when I look at their fights outside of each other, Verna is more consistent. So I think if they fought a third time, even though I was wrong in my last predictions on them, I'd probably still pick Verna to win. I'd probably be wrong again. Who knows? I don't see her beating Wei Li. I think Tatiana Suarez just out wrestles her for a decision win. Yan Xiaonan's already beaten her. If I remember correctly, Amanda Lemos has already beaten Dern as well. Let me confirm that. Yeah, Lemos has already beaten Dern. A lot of these people that are in the top 10-ish, or at the very least top 5, have already faced and beat Dern, the current champion. I mean, just looking at Dern's record right here, just looking at her losses, I'm just going to spit off all the names here. Amanda Lemos, Jessica Andrade, Yan Xiaonan, Mariana Rodriguez, and Amanda Hebus all have wins against Dern. And let's see, those names are all...
Yeah, for the most part, they're all there.
Yeah, Hebus is number 11, and then Mariana Rodriguez, let's see if I can find her name here. Her name's not in there, so I don't know if she's still with UFC or what. Yan Xiaonan, ranked number 4, has already beaten her. Jessica Andrade, currently ranked, where's Andrade? Ranked 9th. She's already beaten Dern. Amanda Lemos, ranked number 5, she's already beaten Dern. So a lot of these people all these names that I just mentioned, with the exception of Rodriguez, because I don't see her name in the rankings. I'm not sure she's still with UFC. I'd have to look it up. But all those other people are saying, okay, Dern's the champion, but I've already beaten Dern, so I should be able to fight her and, win the title. So I say any of those names, give them like one good win, they can make the argument for challenging for the title. So a lot of potential fights in this one, definitely more so than the other two women's divisions. You only have a couple of names to look at, but this one, there's a lot more names to look at. So I think this one's going to give us more excitement in 2026.
Yeah, women's strawweight for sure.
I don't see Dern holding this title long with all the people. Yeah, congrats on beating Verna for the second time, and Verna's looked really good lately as well. But all these people that already have a win over you, and you have, of course, the elephant in the room, Zhang Weili, probably coming back to the division. Good luck, Dern, in 2026, because if she can make it through 2026 and actually, let's say hypothetically she beats Weili and maybe avenges a few of her other losses, I would say that she'd be like one of the runners for like career comeback of the year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's going to be tough to do. We shall see.
We shall.
So, well, that's basically it on every single weight division. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, just hoping 324 gets here, man, because I'm ready to watch some fights again.
Yeah, we got how many more weeks we have? We have is it 4 weeks?
Yeah, it's 4 weeks.
4 more weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
27
days. So
we will find more stuff to talk about in the meantime. So
yep. Make
sure you guys tune in next week, and we will find something to talk about. There's plenty to talk about when we dig deep enough. Unfortunately, it's been a lot slower because there hasn't been any fights to talk about lately, and also it's been very lacking on news. Like a lot of times, if we don't have a lot of fight talk about, we'll look at MMA news or UFC news and talk about, whatever sticks out. But most of what's going on right now is kind of dead. The most you see is fighters barking at each other, online, which is typical stuff that happens all the time. Like outside of that, like nothing really big's happening. So that's why we decided to just go ahead and take an opportunity this week to just break down every division and say, okay, what do we think 2026 is going to hold for all of these title pictures and overall divisions in general. So
yeah, it'll be fun to go back in a year and see kind of where we landed on everything too.
Yeah, we should make notes on this episode and say how we think it's going to play out, and then look at the end of 2026 when we do a recap of 2026 and say how accurate we were on some of these predictions. I think I'm going to be very accurate on the last division we talked about. I don't see her getting a single title defense, and that's not the hate on her at all. I have no reason to dislike her. It's nothing personal. It's just when I look at her record, I just don't see her getting a single title defense. So
I'd agree with that.
I think of all the divisions, that's the one that I'm probably most confident in my predictions are. The other ones, I mean, you can be somewhat confident in, but there's still so many moving parts and so many different variables. I don't know. So, all right. So thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time. Have a good one.
Later.